When the time finally came for us to meet each other's parents, John sat me down and explained that he hadn't really been close with his folks for quite a while. He only reached out to them when it was absolutely necessary because, honestly, they hadn't treated him all that well growing up. He even opened up and shared a bunch of stories from his childhood, stuff that helped me understand why he'd kept his distance. But then, out of the blue, he decided to tell them about me. To our surprise, they were thrilled to hear from him and jumped at the chance to meet us, setting up a lunch that same weekend. I was definitely nervous about meeting them, but I knew how important this was for John and me, so I made sure to give it my all. To my relief, his parents turned out to be way more welcoming than I had expected. And once the conversation drifted to my education, they seemed to warm up even more, got a little extra polite, if I'm being honest. Looking back now, yeah, it's pretty clear they were impressed by my academic background, but that didn't bother me. I actually wanted to make a good impression. They were surprisingly candid during lunch and admitted that ever since John had pulled away from them after college, they'd had a lot of time to reflect. They told me they were trying to be better parents now and thanked me for coming into John's life, said if it hadn't been for me, he might have never reached out to them again. They even offered John a hesitant, slightly awkward apology, which caught him totally off guard. It felt like a good step forward, like maybe things were shifting in the right direction. That is, until Patricia showed up. John hadn't been told she was coming, so he was clearly thrown off and not too happy about it. His parents quickly tried to explain, saying they'd invited her because they felt this was a good moment to patch things up and help the family move on. His mom added that Patricia was only there because she was genuinely happy for him. When Patricia arrived, she gave me a quick, polite hug and came off as really shy at first. But what struck me was that she completely ignored John, not even a hello. It was like he wasn't there. Things took a turn when his parents started bragging to her about my academic achievements. That's when her demeanor shifted. She began questioning me about my job and the university I attended, but her tone had this subtle edge, almost like she was making fun of it. At one point, she even asked how it felt to be murdering trees, referring to my work in urban planning. I was stunned. It was obvious she was trying to cut me down in front of their parents, like she couldn't handle the fact that they liked me so much. All through lunch, she stayed in this weird passive-aggressive mode, arguing with or correcting almost everything I said, even if it was something totally harmless. When the check came, John offered to pay, but his dad insisted he would cover it. Out of nowhere, Patricia chimed in and said I should be the one paying since the lunch was apparently happening because of me. Then she threw in a snide remark about how, since I was making good money, I might as well spend some of it. That crossed a line. Yeah, I do earn a decent living, but that doesn't give her the right to talk to me like that. I think her parents noticed my face tighten up, too. Her dad immediately called her out, saying she was being downright rude to me, reminded her I was just a guest. Her mom didn't hold back either and bluntly told Patricia to shut her mouth. Patricia clearly didn't take that well. She stood up, angry, and stormed out of the restaurant. After she left, John's parents apologized to me more than once. They tried to explain that she just takes time to warm up to people. I decided to let it slide, figured I wouldn't have to deal with her much anyway, and for John's sake, it wasn't worth making a fuss. But looking back now, that probably should have been my first warning sign. In contrast, my own family adored John. They were genuinely happy we were living together and always checked in on me. Over the years we dated, I started noticing something odd. Patricia was always the first one to view my Instagram stories. I have a public profile where I share design projects and my professional milestones. It's a small account, only about 1,000 followers, so I can easily see who's watching. Patricia never liked anything or followed me, but she was there every single day, watching my stories. And when John's parents started hanging out with us more often, her behavior got weirder. It was like she became even more fixated on me. We had a family group chat with John, his parents, Patricia, and me. It wasn't very active, mostly came alive when we all met up and took photos, which we'd then share in the group. After that first meeting, Patricia never joined us again, but she still had access to everything we posted. I think that might have made things worse. One day, she dropped a Facebook link in the group chat and asked, "Is this you?" I clicked out of curiosity and saw it was an old photo from high school, me and my ex-boyfriend, hugging. He'd uploaded it back when we were dating, and honestly, I'd completely forgotten it even existed. I had no clue how she'd dug that up or why she felt the need to share it with the group, but I wasn't about to pretend otherwise. I replied honestly and said, "Yeah, that's me," and he was a high school boyfriend. Patricia fired back, saying I looked awfully close with him and that I should probably ask him to take the photo down because it wasn't appropriate anymore. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I mean, she'd stalked me so hard that she landed on my ex's Facebook page, found an ancient post, and then tried to shame me for it? And in front of everyone? The whole thing was just bizarre. Thankfully, John had been reading the messages in our group chat and didn't waste any time chiming in. He replied that the photo was totally harmless and that he couldn't care less about a picture from years ago. Patricia shot back with a passive-aggressive comment, saying he should aim to date someone with better standards. I was so furious when I read that, I swear if she'd been standing in front of me, I might have grabbed her by the hair. John didn't hold back, he messaged right back and told her he had raised his standards, considering I earned more than 4 times her salary. Now, I know that must have hit a nerve. Patricia worked as a graphic designer, and her own parents had once told me she wasn't earning enough to even move out yet. Sure enough, she blew up. She rage quit the group chat and later called John, screaming and crying about how he had no right to embarrass her like that in front of everyone. She said she was done with us. But John? He just didn't care anymore, and that only made her angrier. I'm not sure what happened after that exactly, but later that evening, John's parents gave me a call to apologize. They said they'd spoken to Patricia and that she was going to try and be more respectful going forward. They reassured me that they had no issue with the photo and that they were embarrassed she made such a fuss over something so silly. It felt super awkward having a conversation with my future in-laws about an old high school boyfriend, but I was honestly just relieved that they weren't siding with her. After that whole mess, Patricia completely backed off. She didn't come back to the group chat and didn't bother me again. Then, a few months later, we were hit with some wild news. Patricia had run off and gotten married in Vegas. Neither of her parents had any clue she was even seeing someone, let alone planning a wedding. They were shocked and furious. Apparently, Patricia had been secretly dating a much older guy named Michael, who was 13 years her senior. They met while working together, and at the time, Michael was still married. Turns out, their relationship was the reason his marriage fell apart. His wife divorced him, and as soon as the papers were finalized, Patricia eloped with him. She knew damn well that her parents would never approve of her marrying an older divorce, especially one she'd had an affair with, so she kept everything under wraps for years. We only learned the full story after John did a little online digging, checked out Michael's LinkedIn and Instagram. Even though the whole affair situation was messed up, we tried to be hopeful. We figured maybe now that she was married, she'd settle down and stop obsessing over us. We chose not to reach out. But then, a few weeks later, I got a surprise text from Patricia. It went something like, "I know I haven't treated you right in the past, and I'm sorry. I've realized I didn't really accept you as family before, but I've changed and would like to start over. If you and John are free this weekend, I'd love to have dinner with you guys." I showed the message to John, and he was definitely suspicious about the whole thing. But I felt like, if she was trying to extend an olive branch, maybe it was worth giving her a chance. We talked it over, and I convinced him we should go. I texted her back and told her we'd be there. She seemed genuinely happy. When we arrived at her new place, she welcomed us in like she was thrilled to see us. The place was clearly Michael's, he was older and pretty well off. The house was filled with smart gadgets and fancy furniture, and you could just tell he had money. After introducing himself, Michael started giving John a full tour of the house, showing off everything, including a special shelf he had for his collectible items. While the guys wandered off, Patricia and I stayed in the living room and started chatting. She offered another apology for her past behavior and said that ever since marrying Michael, she'd changed. I smiled politely and told her we could let bygones be bygones. Then she opened up a little more and explained why she'd acted the way she did. She admitted that she had resented me because I'd brought out a different side of John, a version of him that was more confident, happier, and just better. I told her that sounded like a good thing, but she didn't quite see it that way. She said it felt unfair that I had the power to reconnect John with their family, something she'd never been able to do herself, and it made her jealous. I didn't really know how to respond to that, it made no sense to me. But I just nodded and let her keep talking, hoping we'd get through the dinner without another scene. She went on about how much happier she was now, saying she had finally let go of that jealousy. She mentioned, multiple times, how Michael was rich and how she'd never have to work again. She listed his assets, bragged about his car collection, all of which I never asked about. Eventually, she asked how work was going for me. I told her about my recent promotion and how much I enjoyed what I did. I tend to get a little carried away when talking about my projects because I genuinely love my job, but the second I started getting into it, she suddenly changed the subject. Out of nowhere, she started asking when John and I were planning to get married. I told her we'd talked about it, but we weren't in any rush. We both believed in taking things at our own pace and doing what felt right. She rolled her eyes and said that was nonsense. She told me I needed to push John to propose soon, or else I'd get too old to have kids. That made me laugh a little, nervous laughter, but I calmly told her that John and I didn't want children, and we were completely fine with the life we were building together. Her eyes got wide like I'd just confessed something scandalous. Then she went off, saying that it was a woman's duty to have children and actually asked why I was even with John if I didn't plan on continuing his bloodline. That was it. I was done. I told her straight up that John and I were grown adults who could decide for ourselves what we wanted out of life. But that didn't sit well with her. She suddenly got loud and called out for John, clearly upset. John and Michael came rushing back into the room, and I just sat there, kind of stunned. Patricia pointed at me and demanded John explain whether he really understood the kind of woman he was planning to marry, someone who didn't want to give him children or carry on the family name. John just laughed at her comment, same way I had a minute earlier, and asked if she even realized how ridiculous she sounded. That only made Patricia angrier. She raised her voice and shouted that she was going to tell their parents, and that they'd never let him marry someone like me. John didn't flinch. He yelled right back, saying nobody had the power to stop him from marrying me if that's what he wanted. He told her point blank that it was exactly because of her selfish, controlling behavior that he had no desire to ever reconnect with her again. Things were escalating fast, and I didn't want it to turn into a screaming match, so I gently asked John if we could just go. He agreed right away. Michael looked embarrassed and kept apologizing as we made our way out, while Patricia just stood there, staring daggers at me. In the car, I completely broke down. I couldn't stop crying. I guess her words had hit me harder than I'd realized. I turned to John and asked him seriously, for the first time, if he truly wanted kids. He didn't hesitate for a second. He told me he had never wanted them, and that I shouldn't let Patricia's backward opinions get in my head. He said if he wanted something different, he wouldn't be with me. That comforted me a lot. I never found out if Patricia actually went and tattled to their parents, but if she did, they never brought it up. John's parents have continued to spend time with us, and they've never once said a word about that incident. After all that drama, I finally blocked Patricia from all my social media accounts. I was just done. Then, earlier this year, something wonderful happened. John proposed to me at our favorite little date spot, and ever since, we've been caught up in the whirlwind of wedding planning. Both our parents were thrilled for us and offered their full support. But of course, Patricia had to make her presence known. She found out through her parents and sent John a one-line message that read, "I hope you know what you're doing." That really ticked him off. I felt sad, honestly. After everything, she was still holding on to this grudge. But things didn't stop there, they got even messier. Just 2 months ago, John wasn't feeling well. He had a headache and looked exhausted, so I thought I'd cheer him up by cooking his favorite meal. I started prepping everything but realized we were out of a few ingredients. No big deal, I headed to the grocery store to grab what I needed. The first store didn't have everything, so I ended up driving to another shopping center across town. As I was walking through the plaza on my way to the second store, I passed by a cafe, and that's when I saw her. Patricia. Sitting in a booth with some guy. At first, I thought it was Michael, but something felt off. I looked again, and nope, this guy was much younger. Brown hair, closer to her age. They were laughing, holding hands, sneaking kisses like a couple of teenagers in love. I froze. As far as I knew, she was still married to Michael. If they had split, her parents would have said something, and John definitely would have known. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My hand started shaking, but I managed to take a few pictures just to be sure I wasn't imagining it. Patricia never even saw me, she was too caught up in her little love bubble. When I got home, I was still in shock. John immediately noticed something was off and asked me what happened. I sat him down and told him everything. He was just as stunned as I was. He asked me a few times if I was sure it wasn't Michael. I showed him the pictures, and after examining them closely, he nodded. No doubt about it, it wasn't him. John said he felt Michael had a right to know and that he'd talk to him directly, man to man. I was hesitant at first, I didn't want to trigger more drama between Patricia and Michael, but John felt strongly that the guy deserved the truth. That weekend, John met up with Michael privately. What came out of that conversation was even more shocking than anything we'd expected. Turns out, Patricia is pregnant. Michael had just found out, and apparently she hadn't told anyone else yet. She'd been waiting for the right time to share the news. When John told him what we saw, Michael was devastated. The fact that she was cheating and pregnant completely shattered him. He was grateful to John for being honest and begged us not to tell Patricia that we knew. He said he'd handle it himself. John promised to stay out of it, and so did I. We stepped back and left them to sort through the mess. Fast forward to our wedding last week. John's parents had insisted we invite Patricia since, in their words, she's still family. I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but to keep the peace, we agreed, on one condition. I told his parents straight up that they were responsible for making sure she didn't cause a scene. They promised to speak to her. On the big day, everything started off beautifully. The ceremony went off without a hitch. Then we moved on to the reception, which was just as lovely. My parents gave heartfelt speeches. My dad even teared up, saying his little girl was all grown up. John's dad also spoke, thanking me for bringing everyone closer. It was touching. But while all that was happening, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. Patricia was making her way toward the mic, reaching out like she was about to grab it from John's dad. Now, this might have looked innocent to most people, but I knew her well enough to prepare for this kind of stunt. I'd already told my bridesmaids to give the DJ a heads up, if Patricia ever tried to grab the mic, he needed to cut the sound immediately. Sure enough, when she tried to speak, the mic was dead. She stood there confused, glancing around, clearly trying to figure out why no one could hear her. John and I just sat there pretending like we didn't notice a thing. A minute later, my maid of honor, Marfa, took the mic from Patricia and passed it to the DJ, who, of course, turned the volume back on for her. I could tell by the look on Patricia's face that she realized exactly what we'd done. Right in the middle of Marfa's speech, Patricia suddenly erupted, screaming about how dare we not let her speak and how she had something important to announce. She lunged for the mic, but Marfa stood her ground and didn't let go. We all just sat there, frozen in disbelief, as Patricia climbed onto her chair, literally stood on it, and started shouting over the crowd. She accused me of being jealous of her, called me a bridezilla for not allowing her to say a few words at my own wedding. People were staring at her like she'd lost her mind. And then, right there in front of all our guests, she made her big reveal. She proudly announced that she was pregnant, and claimed she had chosen that moment to share the news because she wanted all our loved ones to be there to celebrate with her. She beamed at the crowd, clearly expecting applause or maybe even a round of congratulations. But instead, all she got was silence and side eyes. Everyone looked around awkwardly. John's parents looked mortified. They leaned over and quietly told her to sit down and stop making a fool of herself. You could see her face flush deep red as the embarrassment hit. And that's when she turned on me. She pointed at me and started yelling, asking if I was proud of myself for destroying her family, and claimed this was why she never wanted her brother to marry a loose woman like me. John had been trying so hard to stay calm, for my sake, mostly, but at that moment, he shot up from his chair, looking like he was seconds away from tearing into her. Before he could say anything, though, Michael, who had been quietly watching everything unfold, stepped forward. He took the microphone from Marfa and, with surprising composure, apologized to everyone on Patricia's behalf. Then he congratulated John and me on our wedding. But right after that, he turned to Patricia, and I could tell by the look on his face that things were about to get ugly. He said, "Patricia, I didn't want to do this here. I really didn't. But you need to be taught a lesson." Patricia blinked, clearly confused. Michael then dropped the bomb, "Yes, Patricia is pregnant, but I'm not the father." The whole room gasped. You could feel the energy shift, like every single person was holding their breath. Patricia's jaw dropped, and her eyes darted around the room. Michael looked right at her and said, "Before we celebrate anything, maybe let's figure out who the actual father of your child is." He gave a cold little smile that made me shiver. John's parents, still stunned, asked him what he meant. Without a word, Michael pulled out his phone and showed them photo after photo, evidence collected by the private investigator he'd hired when he started to suspect Patricia was cheating. Pictures of Patricia with another man, the same younger guy I'd seen her with at the cafe. He never once mentioned me or John, thank God, but explained that he'd known something was off for a while and wanted proof. John's parents flipped through the photos, looking like they were going to be sick. Guests were whispering all around us. The reception had turned into a tabloid headline. Patricia sat there frozen, not saying a word. I don't think she even knew how to process the fact that she couldn't lie her way out of this one. John, not wasting a moment, stood up and told her to get out. He said he was ashamed to be related to someone like her and that she had no place at our wedding, or in our lives. Patricia started sobbing and reached for Michael's arm, but he shook her off. She left the venue crying, and the room stayed tense long after she was gone. We tried to salvage the rest of the evening, but honestly, the damage had been done. Nobody could stop talking about what had just happened. All eyes were on the drama. It was humiliating, for us, for John's parents, and especially for Michael. After that disaster, things didn't calm down. I started getting anonymous emails, nasty ones. It was obvious they were from Patricia, even though they came from fake addresses. The messages were filled with threats. She said she was going to ruin me and that I should have just let her make her announcement so she wouldn't have been humiliated in front of everyone. I showed the emails to John. He told me flat out that we'd done nothing wrong. Everything that happened was a result of Patricia's own choices. Still, a small part of me wondered, was I too harsh? Was there another way this could have gone? Yes, Michael is divorcing Patricia. He's already started the paperwork. And yes, I've sent him all the screenshots of the threatening emails. He said they'll be helpful in court. We haven't spoken to John's parents about the emails yet. We're still on our honeymoon and just needed a breather before dealing with more drama. My own parents, by the way, were just as shocked as everyone else at the wedding, and they've been checking in with me every day since. They're furious about how Patricia treated me. I think deep down, I had always hoped that Patricia and I would at least become civil. But now, looking back, I can see how manipulative and toxic she's been all along. My family's been pointing that out to me, and their support has helped me finally draw the line. I don't care if John's parents try to defend her, I'm done. We finally had that talk with John's parents now that we're back home. Honestly? They shocked us. They told us, without hesitation, that they've officially cut Patricia off. Totally unexpected. They said Patricia tried to move back in with them after Michael kicked her out, but they shut the door in her face. She ended up crashing with a friend instead. John told them that what she did at our wedding was unforgivable. We made it clear that from now on, we want absolutely no contact with her. His parents agreed. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like a weight's been lifted. We told John's parents straight up, if they ever changed their minds and decided to bring Patricia back into the picture, we wouldn't hesitate to cut ties with them too. John's mom broke down in tears. She said it was all just too painful and that she never imagined Patricia would do something like this. I don't know how firmly they'll stick to their word in the long run, but one thing I'm confident about is John. He doesn't play games with people like she does. He's not one to bend just because someone's family. He's firm, practical, and not afraid to draw boundaries. So I know deep down he'll never let her back into our lives, no matter what. And honestly, that gives me peace. We're finally free of Patricia and everything that came with her. It's been 8 months since all that chaos, and I figured I'd share where things stand now. Michael officially divorced Patricia. He reached out to let us know the papers had gone through. According to him, Patricia came clean toward the end. She admitted she had been having a physical relationship with another man and that the pregnancy wasn't Michael's. She said she never planned to pursue anything serious with the guy, it was just an affair that went too far. She had hoped she could pass the baby off as Michael's and avoid dealing with the consequences. But once it all came out, there was no saving the marriage. Since they didn't have any kids together and Patricia was the one at fault for the affair, she wasn't entitled to any alimony. Apparently, she even begged Michael to let her keep one of his cars, as some kind of keepsake, I guess. He said no. She broke down, told him she had no one to lean on now and that the actual father of her child had bailed on her, too. Michael told her, plain and simple, that it was no longer his problem. Despite everything, we've stayed in touch with Michael. In fact, he and John have grown closer since the divorce. They hang out every so often, usually on weekends, play some video games, blow off steam. It's actually been kind of nice seeing that bond grow, especially considering everything we've all been through. As for John's parents, they've stuck to their word. As far as we know, they haven't spoken to Patricia since she was cut off. So I guess she really is out there on her own now. And as much as I can't stand her, I do hope, for the sake of her kid, that she gets her act together and makes better choices moving forward.